Alright, hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to try some holographic paper, cardstock again here, and I might break out my StazOn pigment snowflake. I've never used this before, never even heard of it before. I saw it on the website where I picked up a bunch of Brilliance pads and inks. I don't know if I bought these too, but I bought a bunch of different colored ones recently, and I saw this and I thought, well, StazOn is, it's known to dry on non-porous surfaces. I could probably use that type of quality in a white pad, so I thought I'd give it a try. I have no idea, the characteristics of it. I have no idea of the characteristics of it on, just say, glossy cardstock or something like that. Something I'm a lot more familiar with than foil, so how it works on the foil, I have no idea. I don't know how it's going to dry on here, and I don't know how it's going to accept other types of inks stamped on top of it, but let's give it a shot here. I'm working with a paper, a surface that's pretty darn finicky as far as the types of inks it'll take, so I figure if I can get something to work on here, I can probably get it to work on, most other types of paper. I don't know, but you never know because the way that I use it on here, being very non-porous, it'll probably act very differently on other papers that are, a little bit more porous to very porous. So I don't know, let's just give it a try here. It's always fun to kind of go into the lab, so to speak, and to try some new things and to test some different media combinations out, and to see what we can come up with. Maybe you kind of break some new ground, I don't know, but it's always kind of a good thing to test things out. Okay, I have nature set number 9 here, and I figure I'm going to try this with a moon up here. Sometimes you look up in the night sky, and if there's enough cloud and moisture up there, sometimes you see a little bit of this kind of rainbow type of effect happening. Excuse me. I think I'm going to go for a bit of a reflection. Now, this isn't going to be a mirrored reflection, but what I say to that is, who cares? I'm not going to take the time to do a mirrored impression of this, so that's if I do it. I don't know. Okay, so This is my Lakeside Cove. I'm just trying to decide if I want to go high on this or low on this. I'm going to say let's go a little bit lower. Let's have more of this nighttime sky where we can take advantage of the holographic rainbow paper and give as much attention to the sky. Although we'll have a little bit of it down here in the reflections as well, so I don't know. Let's just give it a try here. I mean, there's all kinds of different things we can do. So what I'm doing right here, pre-composing the image, is I'm trying to figure out where this moon is going to go. And let's see how this StazOn pigment ink applies to this paper. Now, one of the things about the Brilliance inks is when I use it on here, if I don't like it, I can just wipe them right off. With a StazOn, I am not quite as confident about that. Let's see if I can't even tell if I have any ink on here. And I do. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this thing that I don't know, just my feeble term of it is blocking out some areas. And that means what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be blocking out some of that rainbow type of effect in here, okay? So just kind of tap it down in an area where that moon is going to be. It doesn't have to be exactly right on the moon, okay? This is a little bit of a circle here, but I'm extending it outward here so that I can illuminate some of those clouds as well, okay? So, alright, here's what I can tell with this. Oh my god, that is amazing. That is dry already, alright? So I figured StazOn is going to do that, but boy, oh boy, that is really instantly dry here. So a lot of people ask me about the foils, the metallic surfaces, and how long does it take, the Brilliance to dry? And I'm talking, like weeks, okay? Like a week or two, unless you're in a very arid climate where it might, take less time. But this, oh my gosh, we're talking a minute or something like that. I can barely spread this around. I want to get a little bit of this extra kind of blocking out in here. Just to kind of vary my surface, but boy, it is dry. It's really hard to spread this. This ink right here, StazOns, they're not designed to be kind of spread around and blended at all. They're fast-drying inks. They're supposed to be where you take an image and you stamp it out in that ink, and it dries very quickly for you. But I don't know. I am trying to utilize it in a little bit of a different way. We could use the Brilliance white in addition to the StazOn white, you know what I mean? But since we're just testing things out right here, I want to play around with this, okay? Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit of this moonlight down here in the water. I think I've forgotten about the idea of stamping two moons in here. I think I want to just go for this kind of little water reflection down here, and I am really having a hard time transferring this ink onto the paper and dabbing it around like that. I have a feeling because it's probably dry on my cotton ball very soon after inking it up. So pretty fascinating stuff to me, especially after working on these foils for the past couple months. Alright, now I am getting a little bit of fingerprints around. I have a little bit of that ink on my finger. I don't know. Please put in the comment section if you played around with StazOn pigment before. The StazOn just black solvent ink, those are a lot more, well known, of course. But, okay, let me try to do a little blocking out in the sky. This is a very, very loud surface here, but you can see where I've blocked out my little white. A little bit down here. I'm really having a tough time kind of manipulating it enough. But just, yeah. If you've played around with it before, let me know what you think about it. Is it a regular ink, maybe, in your repertoire? I could see this being really fantastic, especially if you can apply an image over dark with a StazOn like that on the foil. That would be really fantastic. All right, now I'm working too hard to try and get a little bit of an application down using this right here. So let's stop like that. Maybe I'll put on some Brilliance, I don't know. But I have a feeling on this cotton ball, that thing is going to dry very quickly as well. One of the things about the StazOn pigments is that that solvent right here, it does say use in a very well ventilated area. I can't smell this. If it does have a little bit of an odor, I can't tell. Maybe it has a little bit of one, but I don't know. You wouldn't be able to tell. So if you start feeling lightheaded or something like that, um, get some distance, go get some air, and just be really quite safe about your usage of these types of solvents like that. I would imagine it's probably something along the lines of working with those old kind of style of, I don't know, maybe they're still out there, but those kind of xylene or whatever based. Okay, now I don't have a StazOn black, but I'm going to use the Brilliance black. All right. Brilliance is going to dry on here. You're not going to want to try something like a Claire or something like that, a VersaFine. This type of ink is not designed to dry on non-porous surfaces, as far as I know. So another StazOn over the top of that. I'm sure that would perform very well. But I am going to go with this Brilliance right here. Maybe I should get a StazOn. I think that would be probably maybe a better choice for this, but I don't have one. So, or if I do, maybe no, I don't. I was going to say I think I have some other StazOn inks, but not black. Black would be the most basic. Okay, now I'm wiping off this area down here because this is a very light surface, and I don't want to get a real super definitive line right there. So I'm just kind of wiping it off like that, where it transitions from wet to dry and dark to light. All right, so I'm positioning this right about like so. It's probably an inch or two, well, maybe an inch and a half underneath that little ball of white that I'll utilize for my moon. Okay. I don't know, where I'm stamping this over some of that white. I think I am. It's kind of hard to tell, with this reflective surface like that, to see if it's stamping out. But it looks pretty good. It's stamped a little bit light down here. Okay. I could go for another impression out here, but this is nature set number 9, so it has Pines and Rocks Small that I can flank it with to give it a little bit more dimension and depth. Okay. So, if you can get dimension and depth, you might as well use it. Usually every time I use this black Brilliance, I have to re-ink if it looks like it's ready to go this time. Okay, so overlapping my previous impression by about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch. There's plenty of leeway, okay? Something like that. Okay, now here's my process here. I'm stamping my kind of solid imagery first. I think that's going to work better than stamping the lighter, airier cloud in the background first, and then stamping this over the top of it, the solid imagery. Usually I work the opposite when I'm doing things like dye-based inks, the thinner viscosity types of media. But I find with this thicker media, sometimes it's like I almost have to do this first in order for the impressions to stamp out. Sometimes if I already have some imagery already laid down, I try to transfer all of this ink over to the paper, and it doesn't transfer. It just comes right off like a vacuum because it's still very wet. All right, now this is looking really, really loud, and I don't know. I mean, this paper is obnoxious, okay? It's just like super cool, and but as far as like a scenic type of scene application, it is really loud, and You know, we're going to have to knock a lot of it down. Blocking out with the white, you know, would have been a little bit, you know, better if I did a kind of a more full type of application of that white, but I couldn't do it. It was just drying too fast. So you're versifying. Maybe I need to see if there's a versifying. I mean, not a versifying, a StazOn pigment black one. That might be even better for my imagery down here. I've been using the Brilliance right here, but there is something to be said. If I can just stamp out those images like that, and for those to be completely dry, and then I go and tone in with the Brilliance, and if, you know, the StazOn, if there is a StazOn black pigment, that would be really fantastic. Okay, so here's my moon right here. I'm just putting my finger on it on the back like that, and then here's that little white area. I'm going to aim for that, you know, to be roughly about like so. I made that circle bigger than the moon, so I don't have to be right on, okay? So let's hope this transfers over, because like I said, that white I don't think is going to come off. It is really dry and fixed. It lived up to the StazOn name. It, you know, dried really fast. Okay, so there's our moon right there. Okay, you can see how lightly imagery can stamp out on here. And remember, when you're stamping this type of ink on a surface like this, because it's non-porous, it's almost like you're stamping on glass. So when you're stamping it, none of it is really being absorbed. You're just trying to leave ink on the surface, and then when you pull that piece of rubber off, it's going to act like a vacuum, and it's going to, you know, remain. A lot of it's going to remain on your stamp. So you're just hoping that you can get a lot of it being transferred, or as much as, I don't know, as much as possible. Okay, so we have that, and what we're going to do is we're going to try to kind of direct things in here a little bit, you know, more kind of targeted in terms of the surface quality of this paper. Now, I think what would have been better is if I did this on a 4x6 or a quarter page, you know, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This is a 5x7, so there's a lot of space in here. I guess it does give me kind of plenty of you know, space to practice, but as far as like a finished piece, you know, finished piece, you know, and an experiment at the same time, maybe it's better. I don't know, that I have more area to fill in and, I don't know, practice with. Okay, so I'm adding these little streaks in there, and where you add these in, you're just kind of knocking back that holographic surface quality. You want it in there, but, you know, you just don't want it, I don't know, I don't want it everywhere. It's just way too loud. I want to take advantage of it, but I don't want to be kind of the I don't know. I don't want to have it overwhelming of a texture, which it is inherently. So you just kind of knock it down a little bit. See this, where I'm kind of tapping it, really builds up the color if you haven't seen my previous videos. See, I'm kind of giving that kind of hazy kind of look to this by tapping this in. Now, ideally, I wouldn't have all this imagery stamped out, so I can just kind of streak across them, but if I streak across down here, it's really going to smear my wet tree imagery or my cloud imagery, my cloud with moon. So I have to go with kind of a very light, kind of, you know, slightly more delicate tapping like this. When I tap over those trees, I'm almost sure that I'm probably smearing them slightly. I don't know. They don't look too bad. Okay. Now this is a cotton ball that I'm working with, so it is giving me kind of a drier, light application of it. So it's like almost like a gray scale. Okay, now remember I'm using the Brilliance black, and it's not StazOn, so this is not drying on me very quickly. As a matter of fact, I can just run my finger across that, and all of it would just, come right off with no problem. Maybe some of that little bit of that solvent based StazOn white underneath there might. I'm not really sure because it's really hard to see where I've used it, but it might be giving me a slight texture in the areas that I wiped it in there for the black to grab onto. Otherwise, the black is on this type of surface. Like I said, it's almost like I'm trying to apply it to glass or something like that. It's over the white, it might be giving me a little bit of a more texture to kind of tap onto. But like I said, I didn't use very much of that black whatsoever. So, I mean, white. It just wouldn't let me apply it very well. So, okay, so closing in here. I should use my cloud cumulus to kind of fill in here a little bit more with texture, so I don't have to do all this freehand. But I don't know, this is giving me a lot of practice, I guess. Oh, one thing that I was thinking about doing was the rip paper towel technique on here to create some clouds. Oh, yeah. I wonder if I could do that still. Hmm. I don't know. I would have to wipe off all that black. Alright, let's save that for another day. The thing that I was kind of going through in my head was I was wondering if I could do it over the top of the black, but that black is just completely sopping wet, so I don't think it would work. I would be tapping white onto the black and it would just be getting a lot of gray. Okay, so here's what I'm going through in my head. I think I'll kind of close it off on the top a little bit more um, with this black, and I'll kind of target more of that, that rainbow type of effect, a little bit more, closer to the light source in the moon. We'll still be able to see through, this black up here a little bit, but it'll just be that rainbow hologram will be muted a little bit. It's coming along pretty good. See those kind of streaky kind of things up there. I want that type of kind of streakiness coming down here as well. And see if I darken the area around the moon a little bit more, it'll bring more of that attention to the moon in terms of a light source. Okay, so let's be careful around our trees because we still want the silhouette of the trees reasonable. We don't want to smear them all out. It's really possible to get kind of like blobby applications of this, so just kind of use a lighter touch, okay? And just get that amount that you want, okay? Try to take out all kind of creases or avoid creases in your cotton ball. But the way to do that, though, a little bit easier is to just use a lighter tap so you don't get, anything too obvious if there's kind of a crease in your cotton ball, or if you're worried about kind of your particular application of a given media, then just make the application process much slower, okay, and controlled, all right? It doesn't have to be like, like a calligraphy or something like that, where you get this instantaneous mark. It's just like, imagine you're kind of building up makeup or something like that. Imagine this is someone's face here and you're applying makeup on it, or a child's face. Okay? You don't want to kind of rush it and go like that and get impatient. I know a lot of people say, they're impatient, but if you were teaching like this process to a kid or something like that, and they were saying, "Oh, I don't have the patience for it," you'd be saying, "Hey, have patience for it." But it's like, I don't know, these days, it's like, I need it right away. You know what I mean? We're not being kind of like an example. We don't have to be examples anymore. Okay, now see, just touching it around here, that ink comes right off on my finger. See that right there? So that's how really slow this dries, but what you're doing is you're taking advantage of that, and you're making that work for yourself, okay? It doesn't dry so fast, so it's much easier to spread around as a result. Well, kind of. It feels kind of weird, but the fact that we can manipulate it, unlike like the StazOn right here, which is set, there's just a lot more control over this, over a slower application, okay? Now you can see what I'm doing, what I meant by kind of muting the rest. Okay, let's take a look at the sky right here. See that right there? I mean, I think that looks kind of cool up top. It's still really loud down here, so we're going to change that around. But imagine when I kind of darken in the shadows down here, how that's going to look, okay? All right, so here's my dilemma here. I'm always kind of wondering if I should stamp my imagery down here now, or if I should get some tone in here. Sometimes I can't stamp over that tone, but then I don't want to have to work around too much with the imagery. Let me use nature set number 6 here. I want to get some larger trees in here, okay? Maybe if I do that, then I won't have to do so much of this toning, because this tree is going to take up a lot of that space down here. So it's like, I don't know, it'll just kind of inherently fill in all that space down there. That's wide open with the, the holographic characteristic toning. I don't know, text. It's not really texture, is it? Okay, so this is the pine tree right here from nature set number 6. Kind of a larger tree for the foreground. It'll expand your depth. Okay. All right. Okay, this is trouble here because I'm going to be stamping it over those images right there. And it doesn't stamp over things very well. Ink over wet ink I'm talking about, so let's try it. See, this is what I would normally do. I'd normally tone in the background before I add in my foreground. I'd do the foreground like last, but I just can't. I've found that on this foil, I can't get a really crisp impression like that after I've laid down a bunch of black, because it's stamping wet into wet, so it almost gives me a reverse impression, because I stamp it down and I take it off and it has removed like that ink, so it's like a white tree against a black background because it's all that black is still on here. So it's an interesting dynamic to play around with, and I think we can take advantage of that characteristic at some point in time by doing reverse impressions in that area like that. It kind of reminds me of soot stamping, where someone takes like an oil lamp and puts soot onto a glossy cardstock. They hold it over the lamp and it kind of gives that soot on the card, and then what you do is you take a clean stamp and stamp it in there, and it removes the ink, so you get a reverse impression. It looks, the technique to me looks like an old-fashioned kind of sepia print or something like that. It doesn't look sepia, but kind of just the characteristic of it is pretty cool like that. It has that aged type of feel to it. Okay, so adding these down. I'm adding a few of these. I do want to get a few impressions, the more you kind of fill in here. I don't want to fill it in everywhere, but, you know, the more you fill in, the less I'm going to have to tone in, okay? Okay. I always leave a little bit of a space there, for the viewer to enter the scene. But look at that. That really took care of that for me. But we do need to kind of close things off because that is really too much of that rainbow down in that area still, don't you think? Okay, let's go back to the black. Let's hope those trees, I'm not giving them any time at all to kind of set up, but let's see if I can kind of use some, I don't know, reasonable touch here to apply ink but not remove, too much of it. Yeah, I'm finding it's working pretty good, okay? I'm not struggling with this process right here. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm darkening the area kind of on the corner, the bottom sides here. It frames my scene, I think, pretty nicely. Okay. I like to go with some pretty dark corners of my cards when I'm doing them. I feel it frames them and it really contains the composition nicely. And adding shadows like this is kind of interesting because the reflective types of surfaces like this, at one time they're very, very light like that, right? But then if I go like that, it's kind of dark in here. So it's kind of, it leaves me kind of uncertain sometimes with how much tone to put in there because it's a very interactive surface. And if I'm working with a white piece of paper, it always stays the same, okay? But this is an ever-changing surface depending on what angle someone's holding it up to and how much light is reflecting off of it. Uh, so that being said, I don't think about it too much. I just make the perimeter darker and I leave the interior a little bit lighter, and then I break up the interior a little bit with these kind of streaky things. And that's not just on this paper, it's on any scene. Star Dreams, white paper, different media, pigment inks, dye-based inks, alcohol pens, whatever. Darker exterior, lighter interior. Alright, closing in right here. I did leave a little bit of column of white like that, okay? So I'll tend to take some of this black up to it, but it's going to be a very light version of this black. It's going to be like a 5% gray. That's the thing I'm always mentioning in my videos of what you guys, if you kind of get that idea of utilizing very, very dry versions of any of your inks, you will master lighting, okay? And all that means, and you can master it in an hour, okay? It just means that you're working with your drier version of this and doing a few more taps to get an application, a visible application of it, than going with something really dry and, kind of rushing it, okay? And then it's blobby everywhere. So just kind of think about it like you're using like powder and you're applying, makeup or something like that to your, like a face or something like that. And a face is a good example because you don't want to press too hard or anything like that. If you press too hard, you're kind of wiping off, right? So that's the touch you want to employ. Or like I always say, imagine it's like a child's face where they're going to be going, ow! If you press too hard or if you tap too hard, okay? All Alright, so closing in right here, like that. Oh, that is white down there. It almost feels kind of, it feels almost like a sandpaper or something like that, where I put that white down on there. I'm trying to add a little bit of this black in the around the rocks, or at the base of the rocks. Yeah, I just added too much black there. This process gets a little bit sloppy sometime, but you know what I mean? I get it on my fingertips and such. But if it's going to be sloppy and inky and wet and everything, then have sloppy, inky fun. Kind of don't let it kind of get you down. It's like, oh my god, I put my finger here. I just removed my pine tree because it came off on my finger. Just take your sponge, just take your ink and just cover it up with a little bit of tone or something like that. Okay, so I'm liking this. Yeah, it's one way that you can get that rainbow kind of holographic feel, is just to inherently have it on the surface that you're working with, but you're just kind of, targeting the use of it through the use of media that you're just covering up your imagery with, okay? And I've mentioned in other videos, as this kind of sets up a little bit, I mean, it isn't setting up that much. I just removed a whole bit of it with my finger right there. I do feel that it does start to take a little bit more ink in kind of a flatter, kind of more complete application the more you use it. Or the more you build up on here, I'm talking about. Okay. I think that looks pretty interesting like that. Look at that up in the sky. It's almost too loud though, isn't it, still? But like, that looks pretty cool. Okay. I think I can go a little bit darker around here. Let's mute a little bit more around my moon. I think it's still a little bit too loud. It's kind of getting there though. Ew, big blob of that right there. I have some quote stamps. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. I think that would be a pretty cool one for this scene right here. Maybe some of you have a very colorful spirit, and I have a feeling that many of you in the paper arts do. Lord knows a lot of you have a lot of different pens and pads and, I don't know, a pretty substantial investment in terms of all of your supplies, and much of that is color in terms of your media and surfaces. So I think that would be a good quote for this one. And I would dedicate this piece and that quote to all of you. Thank you for all of you who watch these videos and like and subscribe and comment. It's always appreciated. Okay, so let's take a look at that now. I'm kind of muting it even more. Boy, that is crazy, isn't it? Look at how that one looks. It's nighttime. It's because I don't know if it ever looks day, but you know, it just I know it seems to look a little bit more interesting all the time. Okay, so we've got that laid out like so. Let's take the little solo canoeist that's also in this set, and why not put that little canoeist into the scene? I'm hoping that it stamps out on that StazOn. Now would be a pretty good time to do a test of that, but I am not going to do that. Okay, practice impressions, making sure that I have enough ink on this. My Brilliance pad, it needs to be re-inked all the time, I'm finding, so it's like there's different amounts of ink on different parts of the pad, so I'm always having to kind of figure that out every time I do this. Okay, so let's go right here. I think that works pretty good. The Brilliance on top of the StazOn pigment white ink. Okay. In fact, the white ink might have given the surface a little bit more kind of tooth for the ink to the Brilliance to grab onto. You know what I mean? I think that canoe is stamped better on the white than it does just on the bare paper. All right, so this is what this looks like. You know, a lot of times you're stamping kind of off. Toning off the page and whatnot, giving it that perimeter. Okay. All right. I don't think I want to do any like Dr. Martin's bleed proof white or anything on this one. It'd be kind of interesting up here. That's a lot of area up there. I don't know how interesting it is. It might be a little bit boring. We could stamp some birds flying across in there, but let's not kind of detract from the holographic aspect of it. Okay, I've already knocked it down quite sufficiently, but okay. So let's try the Artistro white paint pen. I usually use my Miaosun one. Let's see if this one, did I get this one flowing already? I've mentioned in many a comment that I really believe a lot of these pens are just coming out of the same factory. No doubt in China or something like that. And sold under different names, okay? Because this Artistro pen looks just like my Miaosun pen. Okay. Let's add a little bit of highlighting in here. Boy, I'm telling you, that holographic stuff is pretty fun. I thought that stuff was readily available out there. You gotta do a little bit of searching. I'm doing a little bit of searching myself, and if I can find some, if my local paper supplier still carries it, I might, grab a ream of it. It was very expensive by the ream. It's probably 200 sheets, and this paper is not thin. It's quite thick. But I might temporarily carry it myself. I don't know. But I'll also just tell everyone where it is, of course. Okay, so I'm adding some of these white little highlights to that, to those rocks. You can't see it at all like that, but then when you get it across it like that, right, the darker that background holographic aspect, the more highlights you can see on those rocks, okay? This is what it would look like at arm's distance. They're not, they're fairly subtle, okay? I'm zooming in here. It's like you're, we're not going to be looking at this page, in a regular viewing, or, if we gave it to someone, they're not going to be holding it up to their, right up to their face, usually when viewing it. Okay, so I'm just kind of adding, little these highlights down here in the water. They call this specular light. Photographers often utilize those terms. It's light that's brighter than white, so it represents kind of like a little sparkle of a reflection in the water. See that? Okay. Now, where would we add this? To the sky, okay? In my cloud stamp, I have clouds above the moonlight, so I'm going to put a few little highlights on the bottom side of the cloud that's over the moon, okay, because they're being bottom lit. Does that make sense? Okay, so we can see it right there, okay? I mean, it's just a couple little dots sometimes, but, where the moon is above these clouds, then we'll put some highlights on the tops of those clouds, okay? This is kind of, it's reiterating the lighting direction of a scene, right? Okay. I think it looks okay. All right. Maybe it's too many little dots in here, but the holographic paper really kind of, I don't know. It gives us a lot of wiggle room because you just can't see it very well. So the thing that kind of makes it a little bit more obscure is also our pathway to easy usage, you might say. If you put something down on something and it barely shows up, then it's easy to use, right? So that's what we're doing all the time when we're applying a little bit of ink at a time. It's much easier to use, like, a super dark thing or, just a little bit of a gray. Lighter usage of media, the easier, much more user-friendly it can be. And I don't know, when people say I don't have the patience for that, well, if you just take it a little bit slower, it goes much faster as a result. Speed isn't, doesn't come about from kind of using precarious measures, because then it becomes, a much slower process, because a lot of times you have to kind of redo something or undo something, okay? Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm going in here with the Brilliance ink now, okay? And I'm adding some highlights around my cloud, okay? Kind of in the same areas where I did that little highlight. Maybe I should have done this first, I don't know. Now this is applying very well. I was worried that it would remove the black, but I don't know, it isn't. I don't know, it might be doing it a little bit. Kind of on a level that I can't really see. Okay, let me see if I can show you what I'm doing. See that white right there? You can really see it right there if I go like that. See that? I'm kind of just adding and just tapping. I'm not putting big blobs of this around there. I'm just kind of tapping it a little bit. And it doesn't look like a great application, actually. Let me try to soften this Q-tip right here a little bit. Try to use 100% cotton when you're doing these applications of media. It's just, they work much better. They're much softer, and kind of much more natural to use. They natural materials absorb and thus transfer inks so much easier than synthetics. Synthetics kind of wick moisture, okay? The natural ones kind of absorb and transfer a little bit better. Okay, so... Okay. The clouds to the side of the moon are being side lit. Clouds underneath, top lit. Clouds over the top, bottom lit. I'm really pleased with how this is applying and not removing my black here. As a matter of fact, see, I'm kind of touching up here, and I thought, uh-oh, but it's not, it didn't remove it, so maybe it's already kind of setting up a little bit. See that canoeist down there? Let's do a little bit of fine-tuning. I don't know. There's a lot more black down here. Let me see if I can add a little bit of fog around my rocks. I can, apparently. It's getting a little bit of black on there, I think. You know, I can see it on the Q-tip here, but it's not too bad. Alright. I should have wiped off the bottom of that stamp for the canoeist just to kind of soften it up a little bit, but alright, that's too much. I'm removing some of that ink. This Brilliance will come right off if you add a little bit too much. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm adding it. Okay, I am smearing, or not smearing, but I'm picking up a little bit of that black from the boat. I better not go over that area. That area is a little bit too wet still. It's a solid area, but you can see where I put down a little bit of pigment right there. So the front of the canoe looks a little bit like it's in fog. I would add more, but that ink there is still wet. Whereas up here it's just little tiny dots, so that's probably why it's not affecting it so much. If I tap over it, okay. Same thing with the trees. I probably shouldn't tap over that. I shouldn't, kind of risk it. Okay. Let's add a little bit more around that moon. I like my moons to kind of glow, as opposed to being super sharp. So I kind of tap a little white around them, around the perimeter of it. Okay, let's see. See where I've kind of left some of these streaks up in here. I'm going to try to add a little bit of white into them, maybe. And just to give them a little bit more kind of variation. If you have a little bit of variation in certain areas, it can contribute to richness, you know, just, okay, put my finger there. Yeah, a little bit more variety adds to, a different range of looks on a given piece. So okay, so that I put my finger there and that did come off. I thought it was setting up pretty well, but there are some areas apparently. You get kind of used to it, you know, not touching it. I'm touching around on my perimeter a lot less than I did on my first couple of these. I haven't done too many of these. What is this, like the third or fourth one? I don't know if I've done more than that. Maybe I have. I'm talking about in my life, so. Okay, fine tune a little bit on the corners like this maybe. Down here, 4 corners. All right. I think that is fun. StazOn pigment. That is some fast drying stuff. So the StazOn pigment really dries quite fast. I'm guessing like a StazOn, just regular solvent ink, okay? But it dried on there very fast. And it also dried on there very fast, allowing me to stamp that image down there very cleanly. You know, the images that are stamped on just the straight foil, you know, they kind of stamp out a little bit lighter sometimes because that ink pulls off them like a vacuum, but I don't know. You can't beat that as this in terms of a dynamic surface. it's almost too loud sometimes. Look at that. Oh my god, that looks so awesome. Look at that red. Is I think it's reflecting my shirt here, okay? I can't tell. I mean, that's not reflecting any of me, and it's still within view. I'm not wearing any purple or anything like that, so all of that, all of those colors, I think. Okay, there's my arm right there, so I guess that is red. I should wear a black shirt, which I'm normally doing. But look at that, those colors like that. This is just too much fun. It's one of those things. You give this to somebody, right? Look at my hand right there. My hand in there, because it's in the darkness, it's purple. My fingers like that. This becomes like a really interactive thing. It's not quite like a lava lamp or something like that, but it almost has that same type of, I don't know, kind of playful quality of it, that, would get someone to definitely inspect further, especially if they've never received a holographic card from you or whatnot. But I do feel, see how this is really quite loud of a surface here, but kind of muting it down like that, I think that's really effective, where it shows through a little bit less up there, a little bit more down here. See, it's my moon isn't, showing, so I like that aspect of it. And down here, I didn't put enough white down here to kind of block it off, but, so it's really showing in here. But see, around in here, I've kind of darkened it a little bit. So you make it dark around the perimeter like that and just kind of bring your streaks in a little bit. Some people say, hey, how do you stop, I'm getting streaking with all my... I try to get streaking with all my different media, in terms of transitions and everywhere. The more streaks, the better for me. But see how it kind of knocks everything down like that, and it just kind of, it contains that kind of wild aspect of this color. Look at that green down. I just lost. Oh, the green was because my hand was in shadow like that. But it just kind of contains the wildness of this somewhat, and it contains it in this perimeter of this darker perimeter like that. So it is. I don't know. It is. It does feel like a little bit of a lava lamp type of thing or something like that. But I don't know. Isn't that fun? Okay. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, you can see that white right there too. See that white that I've added across there? Boy, that sure is ugly. But when you look at it like that, you can't even see it there. Let's see if we can see some of this white down here. Okay, so you can see that white down there. See it around those rocks? That is not expertly applied or anything like that. It looks kind of sloppy, right? You can see it around here, on the clouds, but you don't worry about it like that, see? It doesn't need to be perfectly applied. My impressions down here were like, I don't know, 50% gray. They didn't even stamp out. The bottom of my image didn't even stamp out, In some ways it was darker up here and much lighter down here. Who cares, right? Just kind of keep working with it and adding tones in there. Block it out. Perimeter, vignette, stuff like that. Add a few little highlights. White pen work, whatever. I don't know, try some metallic silver things in here. If you have open space up here without clouds, put a few little crystals or something like that. And just kind of have some fun with it and see where it takes you. When in doubt, just kind of darken up certain areas like that and really kind of contain your image, and it'll take you to a pretty good spot. I told someone that my secret to all my different experiments is just white pigment ink and a white paint pen, and it solves all my problems a lot of times. With my scenes, it kind of takes care of all those weaker points. Okay, I'm blabbing on forever. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment in the comment section if you know anything about this ink right here, or if it comes in different colors, what are your experiences with it, etc. And how long does it last? Do you need to get, are you going through re-inkers of this all the time, just from the fact that it dries so fast? Let me know. I always like to hear what you have to say. Okay, thanks again for watching.